Indeed.
Hi, Raj. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? How's everything?
Good, good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Raj,
how are
I'm
you?
tired of this virtual thing. I need like a real hug from you. This whole like virtual is not working anymore.
We'll see you all guys then.
You're welcome.
When
We
that
are-
happening, let me know, please.
No, I will, definitely.
I want to make
Very
sure that
good.
I'm here when you are here.
Very soon.
The only thing, Raj, don't forget to bring us some snow when you are coming because we need that badly here in Florida.
You need snow in Florida? Phoenix just got it.
No, we need it from you. You are coming, you bring us some.
You got it.
Okay.
Mr. President Gillian, I just gonna throw something here right now. Since we Orlando, we are so like with this fire, like we should like prepare a huge US meeting in Orlando. And I'm pretty sure Justine can help us hold the meeting and the growth.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm just throw that out there, you know, like we are all
That's-
anxious to get together. We should do US like conference in Orlando.
That sounds great. How many people can we get into the room according to state laws right now?
Ellie?
Depending on how you want it set up, classroom would be.
No, I meant it, even in Georgia, I think there's only 50 people that can attend an event right now. And I've been looking at, well, we have reservations for a venue in Atlanta for May, and it hasn't been opened, and I don't think it's going to be opening May 1st.
Well, I will tell you one. Sorry, I will tell you one thing. At the Grove, we have indoor and outdoor because we have this beautiful outdoor. I'm pretty sure we can host the best, like. And I'm speaking on behalf of they too. They are here looking.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda and discuss it.
Yes, please. I have no problem.
Okay. So it is 3:02. I know that we still have some people who are logging on and joining us, but in the interest of everybody's time, I'd like to introduce our FIABCI Orlando President, Audney Brady, to start our presentation.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone. My name is Audney Brady, broker of Brady International Realty Services. As president of the 2021 FIABCI-USA Orlando Council, I am humbled, honored, and privileged to welcome you for attending the virtual installation of our FIABCI-USA Orlando Council's Board of Directors today. Welcome. Immediately, I would like to introduce you, our Board of Directors. We have Anna Gasala as our President-elect for 2022. Justin Assal, our immediate past president. Carol Burgess, our secretary treasurer. Eliana Goulard Hassone, our vice president. Carla Raymond Kidd, our vice president. Maria Golich, our director. Hafid Boujiti, our director. And Rosie Papagiannakis, past president director. If you are unaware, Rosie is one of most important people. She is the one who created the FIABCI-USA Orlando Council. Without Rosie, FIABCI Orlando Council would not be the same. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you. I'll be there for me.
As you can see, FIABCI Orlando Council Board of Directors is composed of outstanding real estate professionals who are well known globally for their extraordinary achievements. We are ready to work towards the realization of our goal to utilize our unique platform to help professionals grow individually and continue expanding our organization beyond borders. FIABCI, also known as the International Real Estate Federation, is the world's leading international real estate organization. Founded in Paris in 1947, these organizations continue to be devoted to all real estate specialties and activities. We encourage everyone who would like to join FIABCI-USA Orlando Council to bring yourself onto another level of in your business career. This is with pride I introduce Justin Assal of FIABCI-USA Orlando Council, immediate past president. Justin is vice president of marketing and communication for the sponsor of today's program, BTI Partners. Justin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. Very excited today for our presentation, and as Odni mentioned, I wear two hats today. So I'm actually going to be the master of ceremonies to get the program moving along, and we will be finishing this at 4:30 today. We have a very exciting presentation coming up, but in my other life, with my other hat on, I'm vice president of marketing and communications, as Odni mentioned, for BTI Partners. BTI Partners is one of the leading developers in Florida, and many of you may know us for the Grove Resort, which is in Orlando. We were just mentioning, so a massive property that is primarily purchased by international buyers, although we have owners here from all over the world, certainly including the US. And then we're also becoming increasingly known for what we're doing in Tampa, although we do have projects in Fort Lauderdale, coming up in Jacksonville, and many other areas. So Marina Point is 3 luxury condominium towers and a deep water marina, which we're currently dredging. So we're very excited about the projects that we have to share. International is really a big part of our business, and so we were honored today to be able to sponsor our speaker, who I'm incredibly excited to introduce. And I think the reason why many of us are here and tuned in, because we need to understand what is going on with the current climate, and it certainly is challenging these days. So without further ado, because it's much more interesting to listen to our keynote speaker today, who is Sean Snaith, PhD. He's the director of the University of Central Florida's Institute for Economic Competitiveness and a nationally recognized economist in the field of business and economic forecasting. He's the recipient of multiple awards for the accuracy of his forecasts and research and teaching. He's also served as consultant for local governments and multinational corporations such as Compaq, Dell, and IBM. Before joining UCF's College of Business, he held teaching positions at Pennsylvania State University, American University in Cairo, the University of North Dakota, and the University of the Pacific. Dr. Snaith is frequently interviewed in international, national, and regional media. He's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the New York Times, the Economist, the Guardian, and has appeared on CNBC, Fox Business Network, the Nightly News with Brian Williams, Al Jazeera, BBC, CBC, China Central TV, Sky News, Nippon TV, and the Business News Network based in Toronto. He is a sought-after speaker known for his engaging and humorous presentations, and has built a national reputation for his unique ability to explain complex subject matter in a digestible manner. He earned praise from one business editor for having an uncanny knack of making economics not only understandable but interesting. Dr. Snaith is a member of several economic organizations and national economic forecasting panels, including the Wall Street Journal's Economic Forecasting Survey, the Associated Press Economy Survey, CNNmoney.com Survey of Leading Economists, USA Today's Survey of Top Economists, Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's Survey of Professional Forecasters, Bloomberg, and Reuters. He holds a BS in economics from Allegheny College and an MA and a PhD in economics from Pennsylvania State University. So without further ado, Dr. Snaith, welcome. We are thrilled to have you here today. I've just stopped sharing my screen, so if you would like to share yours.
Okay.
And you that are going to ask, Dr. Snaith is going to give us his presentation so that we can review that after. So welcome, Dr. Snaith.
Thank you, Justine. You omitted my early childhood from your introduction, so I'm a little
Well, I didn't want to.
You know, I thought, yeah, Mike, just kidding. Thank you for having me here. I guess I should address the elephant in the Zoom, as it were, which would be my hair and how it is different from the headshot that you just shared with everybody. And yeah, I don't know. It's not like I've had a 2/3 life crisis and bought a sports car and grew my hair out. It sort of was a result of a 5-month shutdown in my barber. And then I just basically, out of boredom, transformed myself into a chia pet. And I just watch my hair grow. And it's something to do during pandemics, which are quite boring. They didn't tell you about that, but pandemics are boring. But let me share my screen and begin my comments. You know, we have, I used to recall the 2008-2009 recession, which is also known as the Great Recession. I used to refer to it as the recession of a lifetime. But I guess I lived too long because the 2020 recession that we went through was actually more severe than that 2008-2009 recession. There are some similarities between the two recessions in terms of their historic natures, but there are also some very distinct differences between the two, and that is going to be important as the economy nationally and here in Florida continues to recover from that recession. And so the recession began, well, officially the expansion, which is the period of growth preceding a recession, ended in February of 2020. So that meant as of March, the US economy was in recession. And typically the dates of when a recession begins or ends are provided by the National Bureau of Economic Research, which is a think tank, economic think tank in Massachusetts. And the committee that assigns the month and the year in which a recession begins and when it ends typically takes 12 to 18 months before it will weigh in on, you know, the official start of a recession. They weighed in just 2 months after this recession began. And the reason it typically takes 12 to 18 months is that the data, economic data, not only comes out with a lag, it is also subject to revision over time, subject to a benchmarking process from much of the federal data. And so the NBER waits until they have the final data in their hands before making a declaration about when a recession began. This time they didn't have to wait as long because this recession was like none that preceded it. This was a historic recession, not only in terms of its depth. This is now the worst recession since the Great Depression in the United States. That title was previously held by the 2008-2009 recession. But they were able to make this declaration because there really was no uncertainty about when this recession began. You know, most recessions, there is some uncertainty because the economy typically will gradually exit from an expansion and into a recession. And so, you know, there's no clear cut immediately month that you can point to and say, yeah, this is when it started. And that was certainly true with the 2008-2009 recession. But here it was very clear because this recession was not generated from within the economy itself. It wasn't internally generated or endogenously, as economists like to say. This recession was really a public health induced recession and in many ways self-inflicted. When the initial forecasts about the COVID-19 virus were coming out in February, and these were based on very limited and in retrospect, very poor data. There were projections that you know, the US would experience over 2 million deaths in 2020 from the COVID-19 recession. And so this was a shocking figure and you know, really triggered a you know, unprecedented set of public health measures that included you know, locking down large sectors or segments of our economy, you know, businesses that were deemed non-essential. And so, you know, typically a business might, you know, look at a quarter and say, oh, last quarter was a little bit slow, you know, let's see what's going on here. And then you get 2 quarters where you know, revenue might be growing less sharply. And then, you know, then you start to wonder, is there something bigger afoot here? And then subsequently, decisions get made, you know, many quarters after, and in some instances about layoffs or furloughs, and that wasn't the case here. When the government said, "Hey, you have to shut down now, you can't be open," you know, there was no uncertainty at all. These businesses said, "Well, I can't sell goods and services. I don't need employees." And so immediately as the output of the economy fell due to the shutdowns, there was a coincident rise in layoffs and the unemployment rate. And you know, typically, as I was saying a moment ago, this is not the case. Usually the labor market lags the economy significantly. And so output in the economy will fall, and then subsequently you start to see layoffs and rises in the unemployment rate. And those tend to be gradual. In this most recent recession, these layoffs were instantaneous, and the spike in unemployment was instantaneous and took place over a matter of a few weeks, as opposed to a matter of a few years, as was the case in 2008, 2009. Now, the NBER has not weighed in on the official end to the recession. But by my estimation, the recession of 2020 is going to be historic for yet another reason. It's going to be historic because it will be the shortest recession in US economic history. I think that the US economy came out of recession in May, maybe at the latest June. So you're looking at a 2 to 3 month recession. The previous record for this shortest duration of a recession in the US was 6 months. So this was very deep, very sharp downturn, but also very short. And there was no mystery as to why the rebound occurred. The public health measures began to be lifted in many states. And you know, once you tell you know, these retail shops that you can reopen, they're going to start selling goods and services again. And in order to do that, they're going to hire back the workers that they laid off when they were ordered to shut down. So I think what we're in the midst of is what I call a bent V-shaped recovery. You know, any time you have a recession, you get these alphabet soup descriptors that economists start throwing about, trying to describe the shape or the path that the economy follows as it goes into and comes out of recession. And so you get, U-shaped recession and recovery, an L-shaped recession and recovery, a W-shaped recession recovery, which would be a double dip type recession, or a V-shape. And so the V-shaped descriptor implies that the recovery is a mirror image of sorts of the recession that preceded it. And so there's a symmetry between the recession and the recovery. Hold on, this is hard to do when I'm looking in the, when you have a V-shape, the sharpness of the recession is equal to the sharpness of the recovery. I don't think that's quite true. The recovery has been sharp, and the data we've seen in the third quarter for GDP growth, 34% growth at an annual rate, and the data I think we'll see at the end of the week for the fourth quarter will show a very sharp recovery, just not quite as sharp as the plunge into recession was. So I think the trajectory is a little flatter on the recovery, but it is a pronounced recovery nonetheless. I think this recovery will continue. The one concern I had in the second half of 2020 is that we would see a re-implementation of the type of lockdowns and closures that we saw in March and April. If that were to occur, that would most certainly plunge the economy back into recession, a recession that I could make a very strong argument that would be much worse than the first recession in 2020, and could border on a depression. And the reason for my thoughts on that is that, many businesses did not survive the pandemic and the lockdowns. Major companies like Disney and Delta Airlines, they were always going to emerge one way or another on the other side of this pandemic. But it is the small businesses, the little salons and bistros and resale shops and family-owned dry cleaners that didn't have access to capital markets, that didn't have cash reserves that they could draw on while their businesses were shut down for an extended period of time. Many businesses were able to survive, but certainly had been damaged by those shutdowns. So if they were to be subjected to another one, I think they would be far less able to withstand it, and we would see an even larger number of business failures than we did this time. Fortunately, the dialogue has seemed to move away from this notion of lockdowns as the solution to the pandemic. And even in some of the states in the United States that have towed a very hard line, you're starting to see a softening of tone. The economic damage that was wrought by these lockdowns is tremendous. And I think that historically, this will be looked back as a tremendous public policy failure in terms of the cost versus the benefits of these types of policies. This is the national labor market, payroll employment. You can see, the history there, the 2008-2009 recession. Businesses' payrolls, fell fairly gradually over an extended period of time. There were a large number of layoffs, certainly, but you compare that to what happened in 2020, and the payrolls just went off a cliff. And it was those sectors that were shut down by proclamation. It was those sectors that were also impacted, like tourism, by the fact that travel just essentially ground to a halt, both domestically and internationally. And here in Orlando, in March and April, the Orlando International Airport saw a 97% decline in passenger traffic year over year. So really an unprecedented shock to tourism, and the willingness of people to travel. And then again, back to Central Florida, the major theme parks were shut down for extended periods. And so, there was just a plunge in terms of jobs and payroll jobs in the U.S. economy. The recovery began of those jobs when those businesses were told that they could reopen. And even at reduced capacity, they needed to hire back some of those workers that were furloughed or temporarily laid off. And so you saw a big jump in payrolls, these very large monthly gains, of multi-million jobs, again, also unprecedented. But that was sort of common sense. If you allow the businesses to open, they need employees to run. But I think we're past the easy gains in the labor market. That is allowing businesses to reopen was a low-hanging fruit as far as jobs were concerned. Moving forward to gain back these jobs, to get to where we were pre-pandemic, to get the unemployment rate down to where it was pre-pandemic, it's going to be tougher digging because of what happened. As I said, those businesses that didn't survive, those proprietors, their employees are not, going back to what they did pre-pandemic. And so it's going to take time for those folks to find their place in the economy again. And so the labor market, I believe, will be slow to make those gains. And I think by the end of 2021, probably the beginning of 2022, we'll see the aggregate level of payrolls back to where we were. That doesn't mean that every sector will necessarily be where it is pre-pandemic. I'm going to throw this out here. It's something I've talked a lot about historically. At least the past 10 or 12 years, I've always included in my U.S. forecast publication a few paragraphs talking about the deficit and the national debt. And it has soared as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the CARES Act, as a result of the $600 billion interim stimulus, and now the new administration is talking about a $1.9 trillion second stimulus package. And the national debt is now over to $27.5 trillion, and we're likely to hit $30 trillion by the end of 2021. And that is a debt of $30 trillion on an economy that is about a $22 trillion economy overall. And so this is going to be an issue in the future. It may not be in the next year or 2 or 3 or 5. But this high level of debt and the rate at which it's growing could pose a significant set of problems for the U.S. economy, not the least of which would be rising interest rates. And, as Ernest Hemingway wrote, you go bankrupt 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. And there's not going to be a warning letter that the U.S. gets saying, hey, in 10 years, there's going to be a debt crisis. Same thing happened in Greece in 2010. Greece had a total debt outstanding of $380 billion when their debt crisis hit. $380 billion of debt, I mean, we run that up in a week these days in the US. But the reason it triggered the crisis was the relative size of that debt to Greece's economy. And so the debt to GDP ratio, which is analogous to, a debt to income ratio when you go to the bank to get a loan, the debt to income ratio in Greece was at about 190% when the crisis hit in 2010. Right now in the US, we're at about 135% debt to GDP ratio. So it is something to pay attention to. I'm not suggesting it's an imminent crisis, but these things do have a way of sneaking up on you, especially when we're adding as rapidly to the debt as we have been over the past 15 years. The housing market, again, the one key difference between the 2008-2009 recession and the 2020 recession was the role of the housing market in these downturns. In 2008-2009, of course, we had a lot of speculative buying and subsequently building that drove a housing bubble that created a domino effect through credit markets globally when that housing bubble finally burst. This recession, we didn't have that problem. And in fact, the problem we have in housing in the US, and particularly so in Florida, is the same problem we had pre-pandemic. And that is a lack of inventory. There was a real supply problem that we're facing as we come out of this recession. And I'll touch a little bit here on the regional market in just a second, although I'm sure most of the audience is intimately familiar with this. But that's important because that housing sector really weighed on the recovery, and particularly so in Florida when we came out of recession after the 2008-2009 national recession. We're not going to have that albatross around our neck as we recover from this. Our outlook right now, a fair amount of uncertainty, I will say, with a new administration, with Democrats controlling, albeit by slim margins, the Senate and the House of Representatives. What types of policies will be enacted? This could certainly shape these projections, but I think 2021, we will see pretty solid growth. I think this is largely attributable to the clearing that hurdle of getting vaccines developed and produced and administered that will allow us to get back to something closer to normal than we were experiencing in 2020. And I also think consumers will be a big part of this, well, they have been and will continue to be a big part of this economic recovery. During recessions, we talk about, economists talk about something called pent-up demand. And pent-up demand is the spending that does not take place during a recession by consumers, not because they lost their jobs necessarily or their income went down. In every recession, it's really a relatively small portion of workers that lose their jobs. Most people are fortunate enough to keep working and see their income stable. But even for those people, they pull back on spending during recession. They don't go out and buy a new car during recessions. They don't, remodel their kitchens in the midst of recession. They wait and see. And when things settle down, then that spending that they held back on gets released. And so that's the pent-up demand. In this recession, we have what I'm calling pent-up demand squared. Because not only do we have that traditional pent-up demand, we have this other pent-up demand that came from being pent up, literally, in our homes with people that we formerly referred to as our loved ones. And there's a real desire, I think, for consumers to get out and to travel and to do those things they have not been able to do for such a long period. And I think the consumer will continue to power the recovery as we move through 2021, particularly as the fear factor diminishes as vaccines are more widely distributed. Here in Florida, again, this was another rough recession, not because of what happened in the housing market, but because how tourism was impacted. We saw a pretty severe decline in state output. I think we're going to see a very robust recovery in output in 2021. I think the passenger traffic data at OIA over the holidays, which really preceded any distribution of the vaccine, indicated that people are ready to travel again. And so I think the tourism sector will experience an acceleration of its recovery as we move through 2021. I mean, the discovery of these vaccines is, not going to be the equivalent of an adrenaline shot to our tourism industry where, boom, we spring back to life and everything is the way it was pre-pandemic. But passenger traffic over the holiday period was down 42% versus the previous holiday season, which of course is a tremendous decline. But again, go back to March and April when passenger traffic was down 97%. So that's a pretty good gain in a relatively short amount of time without the vaccine being a big part of that story. So I think the outlook is good for that sector to begin to accelerate. Much of the economy began rebounding as the national economy exited recession and as the lockdowns in Florida were lifted and eased. The housing market, again, I'm probably have the least expertise of anybody on this call, but this is data from Florida Realtors, looking at single-family existing home sales monthly in blue, a smoothed 12-month moving average in red. And you can compare, sort of the housing bubble era, 2004 to 2006, to where we are now, and sales certainly are above where we were at the peak of the housing boom, and have been so for a number of months. Of course, that you see that 12-month moving average is flattened out a bit at that new higher level, but I think that goes back to my comments and the data we'll look at here shortly regarding inventories. Prices, median prices of single-family existing homes. Again, you can compare where we are now relative to the height of the housing bubble. Median prices are now well above their peak during the housing bubble statewide. You can see a pretty steady trajectory as we climbed out of the bottom of housing prices and that bubble's collapse. And we're seeing, once again, double-digit price appreciation, significant double-digit price appreciation that I think has some folks at least flashing back a little bit to the housing bubble of 2004, 2006. I think that's a natural reaction, but I don't think it's justified in this instance. Why? This is the November data, and you can see that sales are up almost 23% year over year statewide. Prices up over 14% year over year. So, is this another housing bubble? Everybody knows Florida man's not the brightest fellow in the world. Maybe he's inflating another housing bubble here. And my answer to that is no. I'm not defending Florida man, but if you look at the bottom two rows, look at the median time to contract, 19 days, down 50% versus a year ago. And then the bottom row, months of inventory, months supply of inventory, 2 months supply as of November of inventory, down almost 43% from a year ago. And, I think the economists at the Florida Realtors and other real estate economists would say, a balanced housing market should have 6 to 9 months of inventory. Anything less than that is what you realtors would refer to as a seller's market. It's what an economics professor would refer to as a shortage in the housing market. And when there's a shortage in any market, prices will rise. The larger the shortage, the more rapid the price appreciation. So there you see 2 months of supply, 14% price appreciation year over year. It's not a coincidence. The other reason that this is not a repeat of the housing bubble is that financing is nowhere near where it was during that time period when anyone and everyone, and some of their pets were able to get mortgages. Mortgage availability actually has declined through 2020. So, standards are tightened over the course of the year. And while mortgage rates are at historic lows, they're not being handed out to, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that asks for one. So we don't see this easy finance sugar high that really inflated and drove the housing market the last go round. This is, fundamentals of demand, and supply driving what's happening here. It's even worse in Central Florida, just 1.7 months of inventory. And, as you say, the bigger the shortage, the faster prices are rising, 14.5% price appreciation here in Central Florida. So our biggest problem is the same problem we had in January and February, and that is there's not enough housing to keep up with demand. The economy is recovering at a rapid pace, tourism lagging behind, but population growth, I believe in 2020, Florida was had the second largest growth in population of any state in the country. All the trends that were in place pre-pandemic were not changed by the pandemic. They knocked us off our trend temporarily, but the demand for housing is going to continue to grow as this recovery continues, and supply needs to catch up. And once that happens, we'll see this price appreciation start to moderate. In Florida, again, you can see the unemployment rate just spiked in a matter of weeks to a level that was higher than the peak of the Great Recession unemployment rate. And you can see the very gradual rise of unemployment both in Florida and in the US during the Great Recession, or after the Great Recession even, and contrast that with just an almost instantaneous spike in this particular downturn. Output in the state, very, very volatile as well. But when you shut down, big chunks of your economy and say, hey, you can't produce, well, then total production in the economy is going to fall significantly. And you can see we saw a much more dramatic plunge in output than during the Great Recession, and we're going to see a much more dramatic recovery as it plays itself out going forward. Payrolls, same thing happened in Florida that we saw nationally. When you're told you have to shut down, or when theme parks are closing, people are being laid off en masse, and payroll jobs have fallen dramatically. Recovery has been good. We still have a way to go, and I think the gains, as I said, as we move through 2021, are going to get a little harder fought. What sectors of our economy do I think will grow over the next 3 years, and at what rate on average? Well, leisure and hospitality, a lot of that has to do with a growth rate that's measured from a depleted base, and so that inflates that a bit. But the vaccine certainly will help catalyze the recovery in tourism. Professional business services, very solid pre-pandemic, remains so. Healthcare, you would think that a pandemic would be to healthcare what a hurricane is to the roofing industry in Florida, but it turns out that's not the case. In fact, because many elective procedures and screening procedures were not happening, many healthcare firms, hospitals, and other groups were hard hit by the pandemic, quite frankly. And so that'll recover. Again, we've got a growing population that is older on average than what we're seeing nationally, and so that demand for healthcare in Florida will continue to grow. Looking around the state, right now in the Institute for Economic Forecasting, we historically had forecasts not only for the entire state, but for 12 metropolitan statistical areas around the state. We will be expanding as of March to cover every metropolitan statistical area in Florida. So we'll have forecasts for every one of those regions the next time we produce that. So, but in the meantime, Central Florida population growth was very strong pre-pandemic. I think those trends will return going forward. I think the labor market will again be the strongest in the state after tourism gets fully back on its feet. And again, it'll be one of the stronger labor markets in the country. Growth in Florida, and in Central Florida in particular, the pandemic didn't change the underlying fundamentals. It just knocked us temporarily off track. Looking here in Central Florida, I'm going to speed up here to get to some questions. Just a tremendous spike in unemployment. The dashed line is the Orlando Metro unemployment rate that just shot through the roof, well above what we saw during the Great Recession, but no surprise given what happened. It's shocking to see, but not surprising given what happened to tourism. Output, of course, in the region fell dramatically. You closed down Disney and Universal and SeaWorld, and there's no conventions at the convention center. I mean, that's a huge hit, and it shows up in the output data for our region's economy. Payrolls, same story. I'm not going to repeat that again. Personal income, you see some volatility in our projections. This is driven not because the labor market is going to experience any problems going forward, quite the contrary. This is percent change versus a year ago. And personal income includes all sources of income, not just wages and salaries, but transfer payments, Social Security, stimulus checks, unemployment insurance. And so we had these large checks and this additional federal monies being paid to unemployment claims. And so that caused a spike in personal income that goes away once those programs cease. So that's not anything bad about the labor market. That's really a policy that's showing up in these negative year-over-year changes you see in the forecast. Here in Central Florida, again, I think this labor market will again be outpacing the state labor market, which will once again be outpacing the national economy. These trends haven't changed. I think we'll get back to them. I think by 2022, it's you know, the ghost of COVID is at least the economic aspect of it is going to be fading very quickly as we go forward. Thank you. Of course, I ran long as I projected I would. I'll be happy to take any questions at this point.
Dr. Snaith, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. We're going to take your contact information, and I'm sure everybody will be excited to share that presentation. I'm going to go ahead and remove the screen sharing so that we can see you. And for those of you that have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Do we have any questions so far while we still have Dr. Snaith with us? Well, I don't know if you've just answered every question everybody could think of. There we are. Here come the questions. Super. Okay, so from Khalid Munir, I'd like to ask Dr. Snaith the impact of massive injection of money by the government.
Well, I'm not sure if you're referring to fiscal policy, government spending in the form of the CARES Act or the
inflation and hard assets.
Okay. Well, the Federal Reserve, as they did in 2008, 2009, undertook a expanded expanded programs to purchase assets to support financial markets. And so the balance sheet of the Fed is in excess of $4 trillion. That matters because the Fed's balance sheet can have an important influence on the money supply. But the Fed does not directly control the money supply. It's not like a thermostat in your home where they can just, you know, turn the dial and the money goes out and starts circulating in the economy. It has to go through the financial system before it gets to Main Street. And so what we've seen in the wake of the Great Recession and still today is that banks are not lending out all the excess reserves that the Fed has pushed into the banking system. And that's important because, you know, even though the Fed's balance sheet grew, that doesn't mean the money supply, you know, would grow by a proportionate amount. It takes the banking system's decisions to lend out excess reserves to actually create money in the economy. And so banks historically never held excess reserves. They only held what they had to hold as required. The rest of that money was loaned out. And once you make a loan, that's when the money goes into circulation. That's when the money supply grows. And so for a variety of reasons, and if I keep talking like this, we're going to lose half the attendees. But because of Dodd-Frank, changes that have happened and bank behavior, we don't see the money supply growing as rapidly as we would have, say, in the 1990s if the Fed had undertaken these exact same policies. Then that money would have been loaned out. I think we would have been looking at double-digit inflation. We haven't seen anything close to that. Excuse me.
Dr. Snaith, I was referring more to comparison with the Carter years where you had massive money supply and the result was the positive impact on hard assets like real estate and gold and blue chip company. Do you see a similar scenario? Because the amount of massive injection that the government, the Fed Reserve is undertaking is going to have a massive impact on something.
Well, it has had an impact for sure. I mean, interest rates are still incredibly low. The stock market has done quite well. But if you look at inflation, go back, to the previous recession and recovery, inflation never really got in a sustained way to the 2% target that the Federal Reserve has. During the Carter years, again, very different banking system, very different situation. There were also significant supply shocks during that time in terms of oil and OPEC embargoes that contributed to rising prices. And the economy's a lot different, and the banking system's a lot different now than it was during the 1970s. So, those purchases represent potential inflation if they became part of the money supply. They're no longer, guaranteed to do so. So for a variety of reasons, I don't see that happening in the near term because banks, they're sitting on trillions of dollars of excess reserves when historically they didn't want to keep $1. They wanted to lend it out because that's how they made money. But now you start lending out too much, well, maybe you don't do well in the next stress test, or maybe this regulator starts looking at you. And so banks are like, well, why would I take the risk of making this loan for very little interest in return, possibly get regulators on my back, possibly have impacts on these stress tests that could be devastating if a poor result came out. And so they're sitting on these reserves. They're just not loaning them out in this environment. And I think we'll see regulation under the new administration start to increase again, which would further reduce the likelihood that banks will start lending in a way that could really ignite that inflationary fire.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Snaith, we have another question from Marcia Collins-Moss, which is, what is your opinion of the impact on national minimum wage?
Well, it's been thrown out there. We don't, will it become law or not? We have to wait and see. Like Amendment 2 here in Florida, what's being discussed is a gradual rise in the minimum wage to $15 by 2025, I believe, is the latest. My feeling about the national minimum wage is my same feeling about the Amendment 2 here in Florida. And I wrote in our previous Florida forecast a section discussing this. And the title of that section was Everything I Needed to Know About Florida's Amendment 2, I Learned in Publix. And what I was referring to there was, for those of you not familiar with Publix, it's a major grocery chain here in Florida and the Southeast. Publix has what they call BOGOs, buy one, get one. So you walk in there and they have a bunch of items that, basically you buy one, you get one free. Well, that's just marketing. What they are is items being sold at 50% discount. Which doesn't have the same marketing ring as a BOGO. And I'm a sucker for a BOGO. I end up with 2 packs of Little Debbie Snacks cakes when I had no intention to buy one. But why they do that? What's the point of the BOGO? Well, underlying the BOGO is something that no budget amendment or national law or governor or president can undo. And that's the law of demand. And we teach this in introductory economics courses. The law of demand says when you lower the price of something, the quantity demanded of that thing goes up. When you put an item on BOGO, Publix gets rid of more of those items, and that's the intent. Same is true for less skilled labor and the market for less skilled labor. There's a demand curve for it. And what these laws do is raise the price, not lower the price. They raise the price of this labor. And guess what's going to happen? People are going to purchase less of it. Just like if Publix said, buy one, pay twice the price. They're not going to move a lot of little Debbies doing that. And so, there's nothing, no law that can change that. And so my concern with this, especially, this recession had a particularly vicious impact on the lowest income earning households in our economy. The bottom 30%, 35% of income earners were the ones that were hardest hit by these lockdowns. Most of us were probably lucky to be able to sit here in front of a computer and do our job. But those folks that had to go to a location that work with their hands, they didn't have that luxury. And so they suffered the most. These are the same people that potentially, that we want to get back to work. And so what are we doing? We're raising the price of their labor. That's not the way to get more of these people back to work. That's just the opposite. And so what could happen here? Well, lots of things. And most fallacies in economics come from the fact that people don't realize that when you change the rules of the game, or when prices change in the economy, people and businesses change their behavior. And this will happen as the minimum wage rises. There will be more touchscreen ordering in fast food establishments. There will be more self-serve checkouts in retail stores. There will be fewer housekeepers employed by hotels. These things will happen. And so some of the people that I think many believe were going to be helped and lifted up by these kind of laws will actually be hurt. Now, if you keep your 40 hours a week and you get an increase in your minimum wage by the law, yeah, you'll have higher take-home pay. But that's not going to happen for everybody. Again, I said that this was a bad idea pre-pandemic in Florida. I think it is economic policy malpractice given where we are post-pandemic. So I guess I'm against it.
Do you have time for one more question, Dr. Snaith?
Yeah, I'll take all the questions. It's pretty boring during pandemic, so this is the most excitement I'll have all day.
We appreciate it very much. Okay, from Marlene Cambronero, how do you think the current decline in the commercial industry will ultimately end up affecting the residential real estate market?
Yeah, I think commercial real estate is taking it, more on the chin in this recession than residential. And I mean, obviously, the residential sector was devastated last recession. Yeah, we are seeing a rise in delinquencies for FHA type mortgages, but we don't have this threat of widespread foreclosure that we went through after the 2008-2009 recession in the residential side. Yes, many of these delinquencies will eventually become foreclosures, but as the vaccine is distributed, as this recovery ramps up, some of these people will be pulled back from the brink, thankfully, as opposed to those that were just speculating with, some kind of exotic mortgage that really had no chance to recover when prices started to fall. Here, these foreclosures are not because of crazy financial instruments, but really organic because people have lost their income or have experienced reduced income. So getting that income back and getting people back to work will help ameliorate the impact on the residential side. On the commercial side, again, we talk about small businesses that, were running a salon and a strip mall that, couldn't pay rent, never reopened. Those sort of commercial properties, I think are going to feel more pain. You think about properties that are dependent on tourism around the region and around the state. Many small businesses in those corridors as well that just don't have, the guests and the visitors that fueled their businesses historically coming back in the numbers that they have previously. So I think commercial is going to take a little bit of a harder hit and have a harder recovery as tourism has a longer path. And as far as other elements, I think I'm always very wary of predictions that say there's going to be permanent change from a transitory event. And COVID-19, make no mistake, is a transitory event. And so the trends in commercial real estate, say in retail or office space that were already in place, right? The number of square foot per employee was on a downward trend pre-COVID-19. And, people will say, oh, Zoom, this is it. It's the end of the office. We'll never go back again. Well, as you well know, and probably share the same sentiment, I'm sick of Zoom. I wish I was in a room in front of you giving this presentation. I'd have pants on, but otherwise, I'd be much happier doing that. And by pants, I mean not shorts. This is not a Jeffrey Toobin moment here. I think that businesses, necessity is the mother of invention. You can't be in the office, you got to use Zoom. And it works to some extent. It's a nice tool that businesses have, but, I think it works good when everybody sort of knows each other. What if a new hire comes in and look, there's Susie up in the corner of the Brady Bunch squares. Nobody's ever met her, talked to her. The dynamic isn't the same. And I think that, meetings are just a part of the culture and the process of business, right? It's the interactions at lunch or walking to the parking lot or from the parking lot where, discussions, things happen, outside of a Zoom meeting that are substantial. I say the same thing for higher education. You could do online stuff, but it's very different than being in a classroom with your peers, with your professor, going to get lunch together, going back to the dorm together, working at the lot. It's an imperfect substitute, but it is another tool that I think has worked. But remote working and telecommuting, that was happening anyway. Employers in general are becoming more flexible. It's the days of putting on a suit and punching a time clock, have long passed us by.
Dr. Snaith, we unfortunately are out of time because I think we could all listen to you all day. This has been absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And I just see this comment from Alex, and I appreciate that. But again, the sense of humor, I don't enjoy the back and forth, the feedback. Some of you would be yelling from the audience during some. We just miss out on the live interaction. But appreciate, congratulations to the new board, or condolences. I've done the board thing before.
Dr. Snaith, before you leave, can I ask, would you mind, I'm quite sure that some people didn't pick that link up. Would you mind just emailing that to me, please, and we'll forward it over to everybody? And
are we talking about the presentation or because the link that I put up before is for the Institute's website. I can send you both.
We would like your slideshow, if we may have a copy of your slideshow.
Okay. Hey, what do I get in return?
What would you like in return?
I don't know. For tourism to come back to normal, can you do that?
This is how the economy gets going again. We negotiate.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. An absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Did everybody enjoy that?
Yeah, it was great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I'm thrilled that we were able to have Dr. Snaith join us. An absolute treat. And thank you to all of you for joining us. We're now going to move on to the next part of our program, which I think is equally as exciting, but we're going to keep things moving quite quickly. So for our board installation, I'm going to introduce our Orlando president, Odney Brady, and he will introduce then our next guest of honor.
Thank you, Justin. Imagine you realize someone sit down on a place and then he doesn't recognize you and he says, have a seat. And the guy starting talking, immediately the first word I heard is FIABCI. And at this time, this gentleman, he is the president of FIABCI-USA. And here I am as the president of FIABCI-USA Orlando Council. So this is a privilege for me to introduce you, Hugh Gilliam. Hugh Gilliam is a member of FIABCI-USA since 2010. He is currently FIABCI-USA President 2020-2021. He is the past president local councils of FIABCI-USA, past president of FIABCI-USA Atlanta Southeastern Council. Hugh Gilliam co-owned a national transportation company, created a land development business, and worked as a general contractor in residential and commercial construction for over 2 decades. Also, he co-founded an international distribution company and successfully negotiated and contracted with 135 sales representatives in the United States, Canada, France, Brazil, Japan, and the Netherlands. Today, Hugh begins his 23rd year as a realtor and is the director of international real estate at Realty Hive. In his spare time, he managed his luxury magazine, Doorways International, powered by Realty Hive, that he and his business partner created in 2013. Hugh has a Bachelor's of Arts from University of West Georgia in Carrollton, Georgia. Juris Doctor, Woodward Wilson College of Law, Atlanta, Georgia. It is with honor, privilege, I introduce you, Hugh. Hugh, you have the floor.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it actually was November 1st, 2018. I was sitting, well, first of all, I was overwhelmed because anyone that's ever been to an NAR convention, you arrive and then you start receiving a bag of things that has included in it agendas and people that are displaying items on the huge floor. And so I was actually overwhelmed. I walked down this hallway, found a little table to the right with 2 seats, sat down, and I had all my papers spread out on the table, trying to figure out the next step for me. And then Adney walks down the hallway and I just look up at him and he's looking at me. I think he's as lost as I am when it comes to figuring out what to do. And so I said, come on over, sit down. And so we started talking. And so that was 2018. And I'm pretty sure by the time you got out of there, you'd already met 2 USA presidents, maybe 3. And then all of a sudden you became a member of FIABCI-USA. And now you're the president of the Orlando Council. And I really, really want to applaud you for that. First, I want to say, Rosie, wherever you are, I saw you that same day, I believe. We had a FIABCI meeting.
Yes.
And you introduced yourself to me. We talked about FIABCI and you laid the foundation. You did such a wonderful job in Orlando. And I really appreciate you and your work. And then we go over to Justine. And Justine stepped in and things started growing like crazy. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at this beautiful screen here, these beautiful people, and I see we've drawn so many people from Orlando to help at the USA level. I mean, we have Carla, who's not only a board member, but she is heavily involved with the governance part of FIABCI-USA, not only USA, but the local levels. She did that also. We've got Della, who heads up the strategic planning for FIABCI USA. We have Raj, who's the treasurer right there, joining today. And if I've left anyone out, I'm so sorry, but Marcia, who is involved with international and also doing a trade mission for USA. The list goes on and on. You are truly, truly a group of great people, and I appreciate every one of you. The sad thing is I'm exiting May 1st. It's been, our years go from mid-May to mid-May, but this year it'll be May 1st, and Eugenia Foxworth, who happens to be the president-elect, will be moving in, and she will be the president, and she's wonderful. She's been involved with FIABCI much longer than me. She's been to every convention, every Congress. Anytime the doors at United Nations happen to be open, she was there, present. So you're going to love her, and she's going to do a great job because she's surrounded by great people. And so at this time, the board members, the officers and directors, can you raise your hand and show me who you are? I don't think everyone's on the same screen. Let me look right quick. Well, this is your oath of office, and you might as well just keep your hand raised, your right hand, and I'm going to read off a few paragraphs and then see if you agree to the job that you're already doing. Do you solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that you will administer the office to which you have been elected and appointed of FIABCI USA to the best of your ability and judgment in conformity with the bylaws of the chapter board, that you will observe and enforce International Code of Ethics for FIABCI and the bylaws of FIABCI USA, that you will in all of your acts be governed by the principles of honesty, justice, and fair play, and in every manner possible endeavor to promote and safeguard the best interest of our country, the high purpose of your chapter board, and the welfare of FIABCI USA. Do you so subscribe? And the answer would be,
We do.
we do, I do. Okay. So you may lower your hands. And by the virtue of the authority conferred upon me, I do hereby proclaim each of you to be duly installed. And congratulations. Congratulations. Give yourself a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Hugh Gilliam. So Maria, you would like to lead us in a toast?
I would. Thank you so much, Justine. I would like to propose a toast that we celebrate not only this wonderful incoming board of FIABCI Orlando, but all of our partners and all of our members that joined us today. And we wish everyone much success in 2021 and the years to come. Cheers.
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 I will say this, you had a great program today. You've had so many good programs. I've been able to attend some of those, not all, but I think the doctor did a great job today in bringing up to date what's happening. I mean, it helped me a lot. And also, you had over 60 people attending, which is wonderful. I did see Judy Sykes from Hawaii. I've seen people from all over the country come in today and be a part of this. And that's wonderful. And you're to be commended for that, because it's your leadership that's enabled all that to happen, and to bring people straight to the Zoom meetings and be involved every time you have a program. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it very much. I would also say that that's the power of FIABCI, isn't it? Because I actually see people here from Brazil, from Hawaii, from everywhere. So
that's right.
It's absolutely fantastic. And just again, on behalf of the sponsor for BTI Partners and our properties, the Grove Resort and Marina Point, we were honored to be able to sponsor today's event, and we'll be we've recorded the entire presentation. So if anybody would like to go back and look, we're just putting it on YouTube and then we'll send it out to everybody. And we will also be sending out the Dr. Snaith's PowerPoint presentation as well. So if you would like those, please put your information in the comments here, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you. And for those of you who are not yet FIABCI members, I can't imagine why you're not, but we would love to have you. So if we haven't convinced you today why to join, then join us for the next one, and I'm sure we will then. But anybody have any additional comments, Mr. President Odney Brady?
We thank everyone who participated in that outstanding event, and especially our board members. Congratulations to you. And there is no doubt the year 2021 will be successful. We are a team. We are in this together, and we will work together. We will succeed, and we will, for FIABCI, our goal will be made for FIABCI, because we have one goal, is to have our FIABCI Orlando Council grow. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Gulrich. I thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna give you guys a few more minutes for those who didn't give me their emails before I log everyone off.
Bye-bye, Brasil.
Obrigado, tchau, tchau.
Obrigado, tchau, tchau.
João é o presidente da Associação de Corretores de Mato Grosso do Sul, Eliana.
Alrighty, did everyone give me their emails? We're good to go? Awesome, alrighty.
What?
Bye, everyone.
Tchau.
Ciao.